Today we're breaking down one of the most controversial topics in ethics: hunting. Just so we're all on the same page, today we're talking about the most common type of hunting, which is hunting some type of usually native or invasive, licensed and regulated animal for the purpose of eating that animal. Some people have broken down hunting based on motivation, with the three major categories being sport, sustenance, and conservation. But in reality, the Venn diagram showing those three motivations comes pretty close to just being a circle. So for today, we're going to ignore the outliers and focus on those people who hunt in order to keep animal populations in check, while also enjoying hunting and enjoying eating the animals they hunt. I'm going to refer to these people as standard hunters. We aren't talking about trophy hunters who spend $1 gajillion to go murder a family of baboons. That is a very different topic for a very different video. When it comes to whether standard hunting is ethical, there are three major groups or schools of thought we can look at. The first are what I call non-interventionists. These people believe that nature will regulate itself and that humans just need to get the heck out of the way. They recognize that if there are too many elk or deer, some will starve, predator populations will rise, and eventually it will all balance out. It'll hit carrying capacity. As a whole, these people don't believe that hunting is very ethical. And this is a logically consistent viewpoint. And it works. If you believe that humans should just leave nature alone and let it do its thing, you might be a non-interventionist. The second group of people are those who prioritize animal welfare and minimizing suffering. And this is where people are going to start getting real mad at me, because I believe that this group of people should generally support responsible hunting. Now, before all the animal rights activists tear me apart in the comments, hear me out. We just talked about how nature will regulate itself. And it will. But nature is absolutely brutal. We talk about population graphs like they're sterile, scientific things, but what this chart actually represents is just starvation. If there are too many elk, there isn't enough food, so some of the elk die, bringing down the numbers. But with controlled hunting, these waves can get balanced out, so that the population stays closer to carrying capacity. Realistically, a bullet from a responsible hunter's gun is one of the single most humane and painless ways for a game animal to die, with the rare exception of a heart attack, being struck by lightning, or getting a little bit too friendly with a semi going 80 miles an hour on the interstate. Starvation is a slow, incredibly painful way to die. Wolves and bears will often start eating their prey before it's actually dead. The sad truth is, there's just no aging gracefully when you're a prey animal. I had never hunted until I married my wife. I wasn't necessarily morally opposed to it, but I just hate killing things. I don't care if it's a grasshopper or a spider. I don't like it. But I do like eating meat.
You're awfully cute, but unfortunately for you, you're made of meat.
And I've found hunting to be the most ethical way to do that. If I hunt it myself, I know that my meat came up from a free-range animal that wasn't in some factory farm. I know that it was killed quickly and humanely, and I know that it was processed responsibly because I did it all myself. I love being out in nature, spending time with my family, seeing the animals and being around them. And I love knowing where my food comes from. I absolutely hate pulling the trigger. And I think that's good. Every time I get a steak out of the freezer, I can remember that feeling, and I can recognize the cost of that steak. If you eat meat, I don't think you can reasonably say that hunting is unethical without being a massive hypocrite. Even if you don't eat meat, I think you still have to recognize that responsible hunting decreases the net amount of animal suffering in the world. Before we get to the third and final group, if you've enjoyed this discussion so far, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It makes a big difference. Now, the third group is big. It also contains a lot of people who are going to be mad at me. This group is made up of people who are just wrong. It includes a few different types. First, irresponsible hunters, poachers, sadists, monsters. Call them whatever you want. You'll notice that throughout this video I've said responsible hunting. Unfortunately, there are plenty of irresponsible hunters. Sometimes they break the law and we call them poachers. But sometimes they're just being awful in other, generally legal ways. There are also people who hunt not to feed their family or to feed others, but because they just like the power trip that comes from killing something. Needless to say, if you derive pleasure from hurting other living things, that is definitely unethical and you should probably seek professional help. Other members of this group include some animal welfare advocates who oppose hunting. Unless you're a non-interventionist, you have to recognize that hunting lowers the total amount of animal suffering. And this is difficult for a lot of people. Part of that is because hunting is more visible than the natural, but ultimately much crueler forms of death. There's a similar debate constantly raging about the wild horses we have here in Wyoming. Advocates all over the country, maybe even the world, are furious anytime there's a roundup and some of the wild horses are sold for domestication or culled. But personally, I would much rather have a carefully calculated number of horses be quickly and humanely slaughtered for dog food, glue, and other useful purposes than to watch that same number of horses slowly starve to death through the winter. But if you aren't the one having to watch them starve, it's easy to forget that. The next segment of people are similar to the last. That's people who eat meat, but who think that hunting is simply barbaric. I just struggle with this one. That's like believing that murdering someone would be wrong, but if you hire a hitman to do it, then it's perfectly fine. Just because you don't personally kill the animal doesn't mean that the animal isn't still dead. Pretending that you're more refined because you have someone else do the hard part for you isn't more ethical. If anything, it's less. There are probably infinite other ways that people can be wrong, and there may even be some weird specific ways that they can be right. Remember, ethics usually isn't completely cut and dried. That's why one group can be right about hunting being unethical, and another group can also be right about hunting being ethical. It's about learning to identify your values, and then rationally following them to a morally and logically sound conclusion. I've made a playlist of other Is It Ethical questions that you can watch right here. And you should. Now get out there and make the world a better place.